there's so much. And we're going to have this lobby day on the 30th.
Oh, you took
Yeah,
the train?
he can't be here. I saw that.
How are you?
You definitely have some water today. Yeah, that's
Last time I was
water.
dying.
I'm going on a cruise.
I had a water bottle in my car. I picked it up and it was empty.
Gavel, they will take you and you can start. They're ready back in RTN now.
It is.
I'll give you guys a second. For now, first. You ready? Oh, okay, sorry. We good? Yeah, they're waiting on you. I'll call the meeting to order for Raleigh Transit Authority. Today is April 11th. It's 3:35 p.m. And we will get started with introductions, and we'll start to my right today. Mr. Teague, you get to introduce yourself.
Mark Teague.
Leo Suarez.
Bryce Connors.
Sarah Prado.
Jennifer Truman.
Latanya Williams.
Lindy Davis.
Tara Truth.
Thank you all for being here with us today. And I can't see the agenda in front of me, so I don't know if someone can turn that screen on, but I will keep turning around to look at it. As I understand, we need to hold the March minutes for next meeting staff hasn't been able to pull those together due to some emergency absences. So then we'll just talk about revisions and additions to the agenda. I had one, but does anyone else have revisions or additions? Okay. Actually, I guess I have two. One would be, I think, some discussion about the R line and how it's coming back. And I think we had some discussion about fares are not on the R line briefly last meeting or at a committee meeting. So we could add that into our conversation. And then the other thing I was just going to ask, I think that the return to fares public hearing piece, if you could just tell us about what that entails before we talk about the budget and just swap those. All right. If we are good with those things, I think we'll hold comment until 4 o'clock. What do you guys think?
Excuse me.
And as I'm thinking about that, we're going to be like in the middle of budget conversation then. How do we feel about going ahead and doing marketing report now? That seems shorter than budget conversation, probably. Okay. Let's do that. We'll mess up your slides, I'm sorry. So I'll turn it over to you on marketing.
Thank you, Jen. I appreciate that. The marketing committee met Thursday, April 4th, and we had a jam-packed meeting. We participated in a SWOT analysis activity that was led by Mason. The SWOT analysis really came out of a prior conversation back in March about the budget. And, you know, we had a lot of, you know, good spirited discussions on different partnerships and programs to pursue. But one of the things that we felt would be beneficial to get us all on the same page was to participate in a SWOT analysis. And we do have pictures and we have records of that, and I'd be happy to share that with the full board so you all can see some of the ideas and the thoughts that came out of those discussions. Those discussions helped us dial in on some of our short-term goals. As you can imagine, those were very important to us as we tried to responsibly allocate funds to, you know, the new fiscal year that we have approaching. A few of our short-term goals are to really do a better job of connecting with recent grads. If you think about it, we hear so many times out of the folks at NC State and Wake Tech, oh, I rode the Wolf Line. And they're staying in Raleigh, they're staying in the Triangle, and we're losing them. And so what we hope to do a better job of is to keep them as you know, members of our community and on our buses. You know, some of the other folks that we're looking to hit are renters. It's no secret that we have you know, a lot of apartment and condo units that are going up, not only in downtown, but in other communities throughout the county and the city. Additionally, as we've all looked at the different demographic studies that staff has been kind enough to put in front of us, the Hispanic community, we've made great strides in increasing that ridership, and we feel like we can allocate more funds to partnerships that hit and get in front of members of that particular community. So that kind of led us into that budget discussion. We did put in an ask for more funds from TPAC. So I know, David, could you give us an update on the timeline exactly? I'm not as familiar with the timeline on when we might hear back on that ask.
I don't think the recommended plan has actually been released back out to the public yet, but we do expect that ask to be in that recommended plan. And then the Go Triangle and Campo executive boards would be voting on that, I believe, sometime in June. So it'll be right before the first of the new fiscal year.
That's right. And, you know, I've spoken about it previously at other board meetings throughout this year, but we felt it was appropriate to ask for a little bit more funding, one, with just the current climate nationwide, but also with some of the new opportunities that are going to be on the horizon for us as we move into the new fiscal year. We felt like that was that put us in a position to have the funds needed to explore some new opportunities that we have not had an opportunity to participate in the past. The budget discussions then led into Bike Month, which was led by Mason. Really good discussions about the work that those folks do in terms of raising awareness for cycle. I can't speak as deeply on that as he did, but I know we do have some events coming up this month. I think it's it's Bike Month after all. And then lastly, I know Route sent us some of the maps and the schedule literature that you all had reviewed. Was that in March, maybe, or February?
The final rendition is sent to you guys in March.
Yes.
But we
And
did-
so we
did it for a
had
couple
that
months.
on our docket, and we went over it thoroughly. And Sylvia was such a great resource for us, as she was very familiar with some of the things that we would be able to accommodate, and some of the things just due to limitations with the printing that we would not be able to accommodate. I know that she's working alongside Andrea to get a list back from the things that we did greenlight. But I know there were a couple constraints with perhaps some of the accessibility just with the contrast. Specifically, that was just one example where it was something where we'd like to do it, don't know if we can do it, but I know they're working with that vendor to make sure we get that feedback back to that committee. But we did take a deep dive into it. That concludes my report. Are there any questions?
I have a few. With the maps, are you guys previewing before we publish it out and make sure there's nothing missed or something that could, before we publish it out?
I will make that request. I think that would be a logical idea for us to see a proof of it before we do make the decision to obviously print at a larger volume.
Right.
So I'll make sure that we do get a proof to look at to ensure that all of those great ideas and suggestions that you sent us are taken care of.
Okay. And the other thing you mentioned, short-term with connecting with graduates, make sure that we include Shaw as well as St. Aug.
That's right.
So I want to make sure it's collective, that no one's missed in that. And I believe that was it. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Very good. Thank you all.
Thanks for that. We're still not quite at 4 o'clock. So, it's because we're so efficient. We're so good at it. I think we'll get started on staff presenting budget stuff. We'll pause that at 4 to take public comment if anyone's here, and get started going through the agenda that way. Sound good? Oh, yeah. Tell us about that. I can't remember my own agenda changes today. I apologize. I have a newborn at home, so sleep is not really happening.
No worries, no worries. So staff is bringing a request to set a public hearing date for our potential return to fairs. You'll recall earlier this year, we brought forth a Title VI report that reviewed the equity analysis that was performed on returning to fairs if that were to happen, and that policy or document was endorsed by the board. So the next step, since we have submitted a budget to City Council for initial reviews, and we'll be talking about that budget today, and both of those budgets do include fair revenue in them. We would need to also set a public hearing date to officially accept comments on from the public on a return to fair process. Typically, we need to advertise for a couple of weeks, and then we can open the public hearing actually before your next meeting to receive comments for hopefully a couple of weeks before the meeting date, so that when we meet and you have that public hearing, the public has had an opportunity for 2 weeks to submit either in writing or by email those comments, in addition to those who may want to show up and speak in person. So I've looked at the calendar. The next RTA meeting date is May the 9th, and 2 weeks back from that would be April the 25th. So if you wanted to officially open a public hearing on April 25th, through the next RTA date, that would be appropriate.
So closing at May 7th?
The 9th, the day of the meeting.
Oh, close the comments the same day.
Yeah. So the comments would remain open through the comment period during the Transit Authority meeting in May.
Yeah, I think it really needs to happen in May. That way we have that public input before council makes their decision on the budget in June. So I think making it and announcing it ahead of time so folks have time to write in comment before the meeting makes sense. Do we need to close it at a meeting, or can we set it to close the following day in case folks hear about it in the news and then still want to email?
We can close it after that. That would be fine.
Yeah, then I think I would want us to maybe close it the day after the meeting then, if folks are amenable. And then do you need us to just tell you this, or do we need to take action officially?
I think an action would be appropriate.
Okay, so since the staff's recommended budget that we're going to talk about today and make our recommendation to council has a potential return to fairs, we want to set the public hearing for that. So I would entertain a motion to set that public hearing date from April 26th through May 10th.
Second.
25th.
Yeah, I just moved it forward one day, but that's fine. Either one, 25 through May 10th. I guess I made the motion, so. Thank you, Dr. Ruth, for seconding. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously. Thanks, Joel. Oh, and as just a point of order, I think we have one regular board member who's absent today. So that means that our most senior alternate person can vote today? No? We still have a quorum? Okay, well, never mind. Trying to let you guys have your voice. We'll get things in order. Next up then would be to start the budget presentation.
All right, so staff did bring this today as a staff action item because Finance and Policy did not meet this month. However, this has gone through the Finance and Policy Committee. It was actually voted out in February, I believe. So I'll let Ms. Davis, the chair of the Finance and Policy Committee, kind of give an update on the actions that were taken during their committee.
Thank you, David. Yes, at our March meeting, the Finance and Policy Committee discussed the budget. We, at the last full meeting in March, we let you guys know that we would be bringing the budget forward today. And so the budget is, I guess, it's been on board doc, so I know that you've all had a chance to take a look. And thank goodness we have Siobhan here today, Siobhan Tucker, who has been intimately involved in developing it. If people have questions or would like to have a refresher from Siobhan about the budget, I think we could do that, but we definitely want to vote on it today so that we can send it forward to City Council. Does anybody have questions about the budget?
I know I have a few. Did you want to make any high-level remarks to refresh our memories before we ask questions?
Siobhan Tucker, Fiscal Supervisor, Transportation Transit. I don't have anything in particular. I think a couple things we talked about at the last full board meeting when we actually did the presentation. We talked about fares being included in the budget this year. Council has not officially voted to reinstate fares at this point. However, we have included it in the budget. If it turns out the fares are not reinstated, then we will work with the budget office to fill that gap. We also talked about the new service contract and the adjustments that we're making for that contract. We also talked about paratransit expenses, how with the new Ecolane software, we have seen those expenses decrease year over year. So those are some of the highlights that we talked about last month.
Thank you. Do other folks have questions? My question is just centered around making sure that we have sort of captured all of the costs that would be associated with returning to fairs in terms of staff costs, security for cash and things like that. I know when we talked about it before, that was a good portion of the discussion. I feel like that came up when the council got the presentation as well, just to get an idea that all of those costs are captured as far as swiping the card and credit cards and how that relates both to fixed route and to paratransit service.
Right. So we did work with the Treasury Office to increase our credit card fee budget for 25 to bring it more in line with what it was pre-COVID. So we did do that. Also, in developing the fixed route side, actually both sides, we work with the RITP to make sure that the costs associated on their end were captured in the budget projections that we received from them, which are built into the budget. We are still working with the Revenue Office to determine next steps as far as some of our technology, especially some of the new technology. We may have to work with vendors to revise contracts and go back and look at terms. So there may be some costs that we may identify later, but we are, prepared to do that and reevaluate the budget during the year. But at this point, we have factored in all of the costs that we know of at this point.
That's helpful. And then they seem to be split into a couple things in the budget. So is there a ballpark of like what % of the fair revenue recovery of fairs, like what % of the revenue that we get from fairs is spent on collecting fares? Does that make sense?
No, I don't know that offhand.
Okay.
No, but if you need that, I can get that for you.
I think it's
Or at least
useful as
ask,
part of the
yeah.
conversation. And I know there were a couple other questions that board members had around paratransit fares and how we would make a recommendation to set those as part of this budget recommendation or separately. I don't know if anyone wants to talk about that now. I'm inclined to give everyone a chance to speak now, the same as we did last month in the meeting, of any thoughts that you have that are related to fares or to the budget or to how we spend our money in general, whether that's from marketing or really anything else that's in here. Because we've got 4 budgets for Wig Transit and Paratransit and Go Raleigh. There's a lot in here. It's a deep document. So I want to give it its time for conversation, but not overdo it. So now is the time to speak if you have thoughts on how we're spending our money in any way. And I just want to leave the floor open for a moment to make sure that those that want to make a recommendation, I think ultimately we are not the deciders of the budget. The council decides those things, but we make a recommendation to approve it exactly as it's presented by staff or with other items that we might want them to consider, such as an increased marketing budget, such as a decrease or equalization of fares for paratransit, such as a bunch of other items that have come up as we've been discussing things over the last 2 months. So I want to make sure that if any of those considerations want to be included as we make this recommendation today, that they are included, because this is really the chance to do that. Yes, sir.
I know we in our subcommittee we talked about the forecast for the budget for transportation in the future, and there was an app that really made, I guess, the ride efficient to reduce costs. It was a huge reduction in costs, and I think it was paratransit, which we were looking at. Do you foresee any other technology having that significant impact on costs and expenditures that can help that forecast in the future?
I will defer to planning staff with that question.
I would have to say no.
I have a question. I think I know the answer to this, but at our last full board meeting, we talked about the increase in credit card fees if people, using our technology that we're getting back up to speed that'll be on each bus. Every swipe of a credit card is going to incur a fee from the company. And I want to just be sure that I'm correct in remembering that we have anticipated and what we think is our best guess of what those fees will cost us.
Yeah, at this point, the amount that we have in is comparable, a little bit higher than what we were experiencing pre-COVID. We did build in a little bit of an increase. And like I mentioned earlier, some of the technology, I think we're still kind of figuring out what those fees are going to be. So we have built in an increase. We know that it will definitely be higher in 25 than in 24, with not collecting fares. But if it turns out that, new vendors, some of the newer technology that we have, we need to build in some increased cost. I think that we can reevaluate the budget during 25 once we kind of have some better information about what amounts to budget.
Okay.
Yeah, but at this point, I think we have budgeted well based on the information that we have.
Thank you.
So I know the contract at Go Raleigh Station expired for security, and we had found funds for that. Is that potentially added in the budget just in case we need to get a new contract or have to renew the contract for security? If it's asked by council, do we have, well, I know we don't have funding for that, but is there a allotted line for that?
So the short-term contract is still active through we'll say the end of this month. I think it ends on the 28th. We did do a procurement. We went to city council with an award request, and that award was made, I believe, at the last meeting. I can't remember the date. So we do have that secured and wrapped up. The short-term provider did receive the award for the longer-term contract, and we did request and receive funding for that long-term contract through the Wake Transit Plan. Okay. So that's all in the budget.
Okay. Thank you.
Other folks have thoughts or questions around budget items? Okay.
I noticed that it seemed like it was 55,000 for transaction credit card fees. Is that correct?
Correct. That's the amount we have budgeted right now.
So what, do we have a sense of the percentage that will be charged for the transaction fees?
I would have to go back and look at the detail as to how we came up with that number, but I can provide that for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Did you have other questions, Mr. Teague?
No.
Okay. Then I think, other than the fact that it's 4 o'clock, do we have any public comment? No? Okay. I think it's appropriate if someone is inclined to make a motion for this budget. And if you could include kind of when you make the motion, a narrative of your recommendation to, as the requested action is on the screen in front of us.
I'd like to make a motion that, having had over the last month the opportunity for all of our members to review and question how we came up with the various numbers, that we have a good sense of how we have arrived at this budget. I will say that it is interesting to try and guess what ridership is going to look like if we return to fares. So that's one place that we've had to do a lot of detailed examination. But secondly, we do have a new contract with RAPT Dev, and we're changing some numbers around because of that contract. We're also saving money from some of the ways we've been able to improve our operations. So I feel like we have developed a really sound budget for FY25. And I would make this motion that we approve this budget to send to City Council.
Seconded.
A motion to endorse the staff's budget for City Council approval has been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay. The motion passes. Thank you guys for your work on this. Staff, I think, is taking notes on those votes, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
What's next? Thank you. Sorry, I don't have it in front of me again, so. Next will be the general manager's report. If y'all want to come back up from RITP Dev, we'd love to hear how things are going on the operations side this month. Come on up.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the board. The Go Raleigh RATP Dev USA team participated in North Carolina Public Transit Association's annual rodeo this past weekend. And I'm happy to say that we didn't take home, well, we did take home the grand prize, but there are separate categories in the rodeo. There's a big bus category as well as a cutaway paratransit bus category as well. And then there are different teams as well. There's a team category and an individual category. In the team category, we walked away with third place. And in the individual category for fixed route, big bus, we walked away with the second place award, thanks to our operator, Michael Fisher. We also walked away with Operator of the Year. One of our recently retired operators of 32 years, Bruce Holloway, was awarded that. And last but not least, we also were awarded Transit System of the Year for NCPTA. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that we also had another operator retire last month after 26 years of service, Mr. James Young. And I believe as far as our performance for February of 2024, you guys have that information and performance report included in your board packet. And if you have any questions in that regard, we'd love to answer those at this time. Oh, sorry. My name is Tiffany Turner, and I'm the Deputy General Manager.
Do y'all have questions for Ms. Turner about the operating reports? We appreciate the performance reports every month for sure. Are there any particular pain points? I know the past couple months as we've been looking at things like on-time performance or things like that, that coming out of the winter, coming out of recovering into training new drivers and all of those things, is there any particular pain points that we should keep our eyes on?
So we haven't seen the improvements that we would have liked to seen and to see in on-time performance. So that's an ongoing challenge for us. So we're continuing to monitor that, looking at route specific. What we're seeing thus far is most of our express routes are the ones that have the lower on-time performance. So we're evaluating those and the operators that are being assigned to those routes. In terms of head count, You'll see that we're continuing to make improvements. We currently have 200 active employees with 23 in training. We're expecting those to graduate at various phases throughout the next few weeks in preparation for the May service change increase. And that service is scheduled to start May 5th. So I guess the main things to continue to focus on are the head count and our on-time performance. Our safety remains relatively flat. We're performing above industry standards in regards to safety.
That's always a good thing to hear. Appreciate your continued efforts in terms of recruitment and retainment on the employee side. Certainly, that is what helps us keep running and keep adding new routes, so that's important. And I think we're going to continue to ask about on-time performance until we're at target. So just know that we're going to keep asking.
Absolutely.
Other questions?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So with the express routes, you said is lower performing. Would you say it's the time of the route? Is it like too fast, too slow? What do you think is the reason for the low performance?
Yeah, so that's what we've been trying to nail down. At first, we were thinking that, well, maybe we don't have enough time during some of the peak hours in order to perform the trips. But that doesn't hold true because some of our senior drivers are able to drive at those same peak times and meet, and traffic could be different pattern on that particular day. So we're just monitoring it each day. We got supervisors out there also going and doing the routes as well, just to see if we need to work with the planning team to see if we can add any extra time to those routes.
Yeah, please let me know. So that way, that'd be something we can look at going forward. Because I'm always looking at if the bus is too fast, that means the timing is not right. If it takes too long, that's another timing thing. That means something we should examine. So
Okay.
let us know. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
One, congratulations on the awards and the performances. I think that's great. The first was just more of a comment. Like, is there a way to compare, the results and how the awards and how we've done, how you guys have done, compared to other major cities in North Carolina versus some of the surrounding states? Like, where would our performance rank regionally, nationally, things of that compared to, because it sounds like you guys are doing really, really well with what you have. As far as the number of employees, I'm assuming that number of 200, is that the number of drivers that you have? What is the maximum number of drivers that, if there was no problem with budget or anything, what's the maximum number of drivers we're slotted for or are able to carry?
So that changes based on the service, and David was the first to tell me that we have different packages on the shelf just waiting to roll out. So that increases depending upon the service level. But for our May 5th service, our target is 230 operators.
And my last question is, with the express routes, is there, based off of the time of day that they run, are you guys noticing, because I know traffic is getting worse, are you picking up that maybe traffic or the times of day is affecting kind of like the timing for those?
We think some of it's that. If I had to pinpoint what I think the immediate need and improvement is the way the route has been assigned to the newer drivers. So I think that's first, getting additional training, and we've made changes to our training program because it's normally during the day, Monday through Friday. These drivers are, starting early in the morning. It's still dark outside. So how do they navigate getting from the city limits to whether it be Wake Forest or whatever? So we're now starting to train during those hours of the day so they can see what it takes to manipulate that vehicle on that route during those time periods.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Any other questions?
Thank you, and congrats again on your win. Performance reports is next on the agenda. We just talked about the fixed route performance reports. Does staff have anything to share on the Go Access side for performance reports?
I will apologize, as we had some in-depth conversations last month and selected those charts that we wanted to present. I did not get those added to this month's performance report, so we'll make sure we get those updated and out before the next meeting, and we'll have that as part of the performance reports monthly after that.
Okay, we appreciate that. And if their staff feels there's a need to have a presentation on that, just let us know. But certainly just being included in the packet, I think, is the goal right now. Thank you for that. What else? Is that it? That's it? All right. We're going to end early today, guys. Wow. Is there something else?
I just wanted to remind everybody that May 5th is the return to 100% of our pre-COVID service, with the R line returning, the Route 19 return to every 15-minute frequencies. And then in addition to that, we're bringing the Route 6 and 70X package forward. That one has been sitting for about 3 years now, because we did not have the drivers to do that. But Tanya and her team have really been working hard to get us up where we need to be to start implementing some of these funded packages that we have through the Wake Transit Plan. So Route 6 will also become a new high-frequency network service. And in addition to that, staff had requested, I believe it was as an amendment, to move our Route 21 forward to a new high-frequency service route. So with this May 5th service, we will be doubling the amount of miles that we operate from 40 to 80 with high-frequency service every 15 minutes. So I think that's significant. And each package that we have, we've got another one planned for September, another one planned for January, and both of those have additional, I think between the two packages, there's at least 3 more routes that will go high frequency. So by the end of this year, we're really going to have a significant portion of our high frequency network built out.
That's great news. Does folks have questions on the May 5th return to service package? Linda?
I have, you want to go?
Sarah?
Yeah, I have just a quick question. Is there going to be like an event or something to celebrate the return of the R line? It's been so long since it's been around, and I think that would be something to like just make a big deal about. I don't even know, just like balloons around at the at the basic at the center, city center in Moore Square.
Do we have it in our budget?
Yeah, we have. I
Do we
think
have
dollar
balloons
store
in the
balloons.
budget?
I think we can manage that.
I have a question. If City Council does approve return to fare, will our line be free service again?
I think unless we take an action to change it, it would return in the way that it was pre-COVID. It's certainly within our purview to make a recommendation about changing that, if that was something that the body wanted to discuss. And then, does staff have an answer for Sarah's question of whether or not we're having a party?
We don't have anything planned at the moment.
I think just celebrating 100% turn to service in general, I think is a really good idea. If we can think of a simple way to do it at the bus station at least that day, I think would be really cool.
Yeah, we did release or have a press release, I believe it was Monday this week, and I think we've already seen multiple really good articles come out from that press release. So we're getting some traction for it, and I don't disagree. I think it's something to celebrate, especially with the additional 4 routes that'll be upping our high frequency network. I think that's something to celebrate.
Cool.
And then take a trip on the R line together.
Yeah,
we could have a board field trip.
Field trip on the R line.
We should do that in general.
Yes. Meet at the Russ.
Linda, you had a question?
I had a question. It's not about the celebration, although I really do think we should celebrate that. You had mentioned that we have 200 drivers now and 26 in training, but that for the full service, it's going to take 230 drivers. So I want to make sure that we have, I mean, do you anticipate that we will have 230 on May 5th?
Tanya and I have that conversation almost daily. And she is very confident. I'll let you speak.
Yeah, and we haven't stopped recruiting. So in my class on Monday the 15th, I already have 11 individuals signed up for that class. So my overtime probably maybe a little bit more than what I would like the first week or so, but these people will continue to graduate and be able to perform the service. So I'm really confident. And as to David's point, we do talk about this almost maybe a couple times a day.
Thank you.
I'll just add that it takes 194 drivers to perform the service that we'll be doing on the 5th. So the extra 36 are to cover vacations and what we call extra board. So if somebody does call out sick, they've got extra staff there to sign up. So they're already good. So everything on top of that is kind of bonus.
Other questions on the May 5th? Yes.
Oh, no. Oh, yes.
Or other things?
So for the R line, did we print the new maps prior to COVID, or they're just waiting to be published?
You mean the R-Line route?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sure we did because it was actually operating in service on that new route for at least a month or two before the pandemic hit. But we'll make sure we've got plenty.
Okay. No, I saw 2 different versions by different entities, so I just want to make sure that the correct one is made public.
Other concluding remarks then by authority members or staff? Okay. I'll just, I didn't do this at the time of making the vote, but I'll just conclude by saying that I hope everyone at the table and on staff knows that I appreciate how hard you're putting in work and understanding on the budget and the situation. But as I've said before, I don't feel that this is the time to return to fairs. And so my reason for voting that we don't recommend the budget was particularly around the fair issues. And those are my personal feelings, and I didn't want it to hold up the board and the action the board makes. But I did vote with my personal feelings as an individual. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. As we continue to speak out in the community, as these comes up, as we have public hearings, I think we'll continue to have this conversation. So if you have any questions about how I feel about it personally, feel free to chat with me. Anyone in the public, anyone on staff that has any of those questions, feel free to come up. I wouldn't do this if I didn't like talking about this all the time. And I think everyone on the body probably feels the same way, but I won't open up their inboxes for public feedback. They can do that themselves. But I really do appreciate how hard we've all worked on trying to deliver something that we think everyone can understand what we're recommending. It takes a lot of work on staff's part and on the body's part to make that happen behind the scenes, and I want everyone to know that. So thank you all for your time.
Madam Chair, I just have a general question, and that is, we've now voted to send this budget to council. I know that in our retreat and a couple of meetings past, we talked about when it's our turn to talk to the city council. Is there a schedule of that? Do we know when the transit authority is going to be, like when we're
I
going
think
to
staff
be
manages
there?
that with the city manager, is that correct? Do we have that schedule yet?
Well, we're waiting on the documents from the chair.
The work
for
plan
that, yeah.
documents that I owe you this month. All right. So after I send the PowerPoint version of our work plan summary to David, then we will be on the schedule. Thank you, Linda.
And just
you.
for what it's worth, to get on council schedule, we have to submit that agenda item 2 weeks ahead of time. So just remember, when you send it, at a minimum, it's going to be 2 weeks before the next council meeting, before we can get on that agenda.
Any other thoughts, questions?
I do have a question. When will we see the low-income fare program for the ADA paratransit program?
There will be a low-income fare program, period. It'll be across the board for both fixed route and ADA, so there won't be a separate one for ADA. We are working with Go Triangle to put the final touches on what that policy might look like, and then we'll be bringing that to Finance and Policy Committee hopefully next month, but I'm not 100% sure we'll have it fully ready.
Thanks, y'all. I think everyone said their piece today. We are going to end today's meeting quite early to make up for going over last month. Thank you all very much, and I will call this meeting to be adjourned at 4:22 p.m.
Good.